Welcome to the Powell Bros Movie Reviews. I am Tobiah Powell, one of your hosts, joined with Trent Powell, your other host. How are you
Hello.
doing today, Trent?
Doing awesome. Very tired, but awesome.
Sweet. Yeah.
Got my coffee.
we
Ready to talk about another movie?
yeah, we have quite the movie to go over today.
Oh, do we?
Um
Oh boy.
yeah.
I don't.
All
I don't
right.
even. I don't even know where to start with this one. I'm
Yeah.
gonna. I'm gonna let
So
you lead us.
yeah, you guys all I'm sure saw on the video that you clicked. This is Howard the Duck
I'm sorry you clicked on
movie
this.
review.
I'm sorry you're listening to this.
Yeah. So, yeah, what are your initial thoughts, Trent?
What are my initial thoughts?
Yeah.
Well, this movie had a lot in it. I. I don't even know. Like, there's very little things that I think were redeemable about this movie or that were in any way good. I think there was just a lot. It had a lot of problems down to the script, dialogue, down to the CGI, which I mean it's an '80s movie, but still pretty atrocious CGI. I
Yeah.
mean, you have way better CGI in the Star Wars movies, which came out before this. So come on, Lucas. We'll get into George Lucas and his decisions that he's made film
Yeah.
outside of Star Wars, even within Star Wars. But yeah, man, if I hear another duck pun, I'm I'm done. I'm not doing this podcast anymore. It was not worth
Yeah.
it. I swear there was like 150 duck puns in that whole movie that was like an hour and 50 minutes,
Yeah. It was
and
a
and they were
long
even
movie.
like it was like the dumbest things. Like they weren't even funny puns. It was, anyways. I
Yeah.
this movie did not know what it was from the beginning. It didn't know if it's a kids movie. It didn't know if it's an adult movie. It didn't know if it's an action movie, a romance movie, or a superhero movie. It was all over the place. It's rated PG,
I was very
and
surprised at the end when I saw that it was PG.
yeah.
I
Oh,
was like,
I knew it
what
was
in the
PG.
world?
Yeah,
How is that a PG
and
movie?
like from what I know, it was marketed as a kids movie in a lot of ways. Though they kind of did what I've heard is that there actually had two different marketing decisions. They had one where they kind of put Leah Thompson and these in like a commercial these commercials for the movie and kind of sexualized her, which was really just terrible. But did that for the
Hmm.
movie, and they did that in the movie, which is also terrible and
Yeah,
annoying.
for sure.
But so they had that route, and it made it like seem like it was like a rated R comedy, um,
Yeah.
like a Seth MacFarlane movie or something. This is back in the '80s, and then you also had other commercials where it was marketing as a kids movie. It's a movie about a superhero duck who saves the universe. It's like, yay, take your kids to go see it. I can only imagine how many parents took their kids to see this movie, and within the first 3 minutes they walked out of the theater.
Yeah,
I would have.
for sure.
I was like, oh my goodness, it was awful from the beginning. It was just, I could not
Yeah.
stand it. I cannot. I so there's
There were
Go
definitely a
ahead.
lot of, because there's a lot of the jokes that I'm pretty sure were supposed to be jokes that did not land
No,
at all.
not at all.
Throughout the entire movie, like
Right.
not just the puns, like even
So
like
bad.
yeah, like some of the sexual things were, I'm pretty
Oh
sure a
my
lot of it was,
goodness.
there was a lot of times it was supposed to be a joke and it just
Yeah,
didn't land.
just did not land at all.
Like the naked duck at the beginning
Yeah, that was weird.
in the bathtub. Like
It's terrible.
nobody
No,
wanted to see
no one
that.
wanted to think about that, see that. It's just, I was like, for the first half of the movie, I was like, I'm just gonna like put this off. I'm gonna like have this as background like noise. I
Yeah.
don't even want
So
to watch this
well, so
movie.
that's the thing. So for the first half of this movie, talking about story now, the first
Yeah.
half of this movie, more than the first half, it was like this is an hour and 50 long movie. The first hour, it was at the hour mark. It wasn't
Uh
until then that the story actually started.
huh. Yeah. Wow. That's
Up
funny.
until then,
It's just all
so
over
the
the
first
place.
hour, yeah, so the first hour went by, and it was all over the place. that was when it was like the movie was like trying to decide what it was, if it was a comedy, a superhero movie, a romance movie,
Mm.
some weird combination of one or two or the other,
Yeah.
until it gets to the hour mark, and then I realized, oh, this is where like the villain comes in, because we didn't even get introduced to the villain till an
Until
hour into the
hour in.
movie. I
Wow.
literally thought, like, I wrote in my notes, I'm like, so there's no villain in this movie, it's just like a, like a circumstance driven movie.
Right.
And
And
for the
he's
first
gonna
hour, it
try to
definitely
make
is
his
a
way back home.
circumstance. Yeah, so the first hour definitely is a circumstance driven movie, which
Hmm.
can work in some circumstance, like in some movies, but just that first hour did not work. I mean,
Yeah.
you can tell by the hour mark. So when you get introduced to this villain, I looked at the clock. I'm like, okay, they're introducing a villain right now. How much longer do I have? And
Yeah.
it was like
Well,
50 more
it's an
minutes of
hour.
this
Yeah, an
thing.
hour and 50-minute long movie, of filled with duck puns and
Yeah, I almost gave up at
uh,
that hour moment. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know if I can handle another 50 minutes of this.
I,
Just
yeah.
a headache.
So like there's some movies that become cult classics that, like, when they first come out, like when this movie first came out, it didn't do it. It completely bombed at the theater. I think it had like a $38 million budget, and it made about 38 million in the theaters, which means it didn't make any money. It lost money when you factor in marketing and the money that goes to the theaters and whatnot. Like, they lost money on this, and like I've heard that, like, among some circles, this movie's kind of become a cult classic, like many other films, like Monty Python.
Yeah, it's got like some
I'm blanking on cult classics, but yeah.
it's got some group of fans, yeah,
Hmm.
but
Right.
nothing
And like a
compared
lot
to
of
any
there's a
other
lot of
things.
80s movies and that become very popular among certain groups, even if they're terrible movies. Like, you just lay the awfulness aside, and like the movie The Room. That's a good
Hmm.
example.
It's that one's
It's
so bad it's funny.
it's so bad it's funny, yeah. And there's a lot like that. You have. I
And
mean, I don't
like,
know
yeah,
if.
there's definitely as like that one's one that you can comfortably laugh at the whole thing. This one
Yeah.
you're just uncomfortable the
You're
whole
just
time.
uncomfortable the whole time. It's not funny. I don't think I laughed once. I think I laughed a couple times at how stupid it was, and I just couldn't believe
Yeah.
that the character made a certain decision, or something happened,
Yeah.
or that the Dark Overlord became a blob of CGI mess.
Yeah.
That was. I don't know, but like, so like, and then you get to Howard the Duck, and like there's a group of people that like this movie, but I think universally, for the most part, it's just bad. No one wants to watch it.
Yeah.
It's just awful.
No, this movie, it's not even considered the worst superhero movie. It's considered one
Mm.
of the worst movies
Movies of all time. Yeah,
ever. Just
it
any
is.
movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is. It is one of the worst.
So
Um,
this was Marvel's very first theatrical release movie. They did some movies in the past.
yeah.
They did like a Japanese Spider-Man movie. They did in the 70s, or the 40s. No, it was the 40s. They did the Captain America movie, or 40s or 70s, whenever that was.
Yeah.
They did the Captain
Um,
America movie.
yeah.
But and then they did some other TV movies, like the Incredible Hulk and whatnot,
Hmm.
and the TV show. But this was the first theatrical release for Marvel.
Yeah. I think,
And
yeah, so I think we can talk a lot about, since there's no Stanley cameo and there's no end credit scene, I think we could talk about how this movie came to be in our after hours
After
on the
Hours,
Patreon.
it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Making
So
decisions on the fly, people. It's how we work. It's how we do.
so if you want to support us and hear
Yes.
about how this movie was made and
Give you a little tease.
the very weird stories and a lot of just what George Lucas wanted and all that stuff, you can
Yep.
sign on to our After Hours Patreon movie chronicles episode, and we'll
Yep.
talk about that for sure.
Right.
And yeah, we appreciate your support.
Yes, we
But
do.
yeah, so let's try to get into the story of this movie and
Sure.
where its downfalls are.
Mhm.
So the first hour, I think, would be a good section to kind of go over at first,
Yeah.
before we get into that second 50 minutes.
I feel like there was a lot that happened in the first hour, but nothing that really drove
Yeah, no,
the
nothing.
story. Like,
Yeah, so
a
you
lot
get
happened,
this.
as in, like, he, he
that
comes
was
to
like the
Earth,
circumstance. Yeah, that was the
so, yeah,
circumstance-driven
he
story. So
he has
he's on
for some
Earth.
reason he decides he needs to go get a job at a
Yeah, I know.
weird
So that's
club
yeah. I was
thing
wrote
as
down
a
like what? Okay, what's his mission here? Is he trying to get back home? No, he decided he needs to get a job and fit in. Okay, now he
oh no, I
kind
don't
of
fit in.
wants to
I'm
go
gonna
back
get a
home
job.
because like he might need to, and then yeah, and then there's
Someone
tons.
decided to give him a job.
Oh yeah, and then oh yeah, and some point during that first hour too, they decide to have a love interest and start to have a romantic stuff going on between
Going to barf.
Howard the Duck and whatever Leah Thompson's character's name was.
Vanessa? Is that her name?
I don't think so.
No, that's what came to mind. Maybe not. What do I know? I don't remember. I don't remember anyone's name except for Howard.
So yeah, there's a lot of yeah, and in that first hour too, there was a lot of sexual references. Some of it was supposed to be jokes, I think, because of like a duck, but then you get the weird sexual tension between him and the girl,
What was
just
like?
made
What was with
everybody
that?
very uncomfortable.
Yes, I mean it was bestiality. I mean she was coming onto a duck. It was very uncomfortable. I can't believe Leah Thompson did that, and it was just like or.
So this was her
even just the
bit. This
idea of
was
it, it's
her
just so-
next movie after Back to the
After-
Future. This was her next
Really?
movie.
Wow.
So and the reason she signed on was because George Lucas was involved. I mean,
Right.
George Lucas was fresh off of Star Wars.
Why wouldn't
so,
you? Yeah.
So it's like this.
course.
Oh wow, this is a huge thing. This is a Marvel comic. This is a Marvel movie that they're making, and
Yeah.
so she got totally screwed by
Yep.
signing on to this movie.
Right.
But yeah, the first hour, there really isn't a whole lot to talk about it because like it was just this character that just got sent to Earth, and
Yeah, they had that weird part where they go to see she takes him to go see her friend who supposedly is a scientist, but he's actually an assistant to a scientist, which I don't understand like why she didn't know that, or I didn't get that. But they go see him and find out, oh, he's just an assistant. He doesn't actually know anything. He's not going to be able to get him home. And so they leave the building, and they have a fight, and he's like, "Well, you're dead to me, toots." And then he walks off, and that's it. It's like, and he's like, "I need a job," and he goes gets a job, and for some reason someone gives him a job, and then he goes to the bar again where she's performing, and is that when the bar fight happens? The first bar fight. I can't remember. I don't know. Probably. And then they reconcile, and then they go back to her place, and they have that one very uncomfortable scene, and that was just stupid. Don't just skip it. Skip most of the scenes in this movie. Skip everything. It's not worth it. Don't watch this movie. There we go.
yeah, yeah. So
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So you get like and with like the bar fight scene, you get all these. Throughout the entire beginning of like first hour of this movie, there's so many different like quick scene antagonists that just popped in, and like I kept wondering like, are any of these going to be like an actual villain?
Yeah.
And you just kept
there were a
getting all
lot of
these weird,
antagonists.
different-
Yeah,
a lot of antagonists, but they were all just like to drive these scenes forward. Like that's
Right.
all it was, and push the
to
story
show
along.
that he doesn't belong, and he's an outcast, and and that's a kind of a theme of the movie is belonging, and being able to fit in when others ostracize you.
Yeah, so he just gets thrown into all these weird circumstances and just keeps making all these weird decisions, and keeps going to all these different places. And it was all over the place. None of it made any sense.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything else to say about that first hour? I mean, there's not really.
I don't think so. And so that first hour would be kind of the.
I think, like you said, the theme of like.
It's not even the second act of the movie. Like, there's no.
There wasn't really even.
There wasn't really no
set for this.
I mean, there was a third act, sort of like a traditional. Third act.
The third act would be kind of like that last 50 minutes.
Yeah. And the first act being like, oh, he's brought to Earth, and he's having to live his life in this new world, and meets these new people, and it sets him up to go and find a way to come home, to make it back home, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so then when they introduce the well, he eventually becomes the antagonist, but he's the scientist who gets possessed by the Dark Overlord.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean,
Yeah.
he's like, I think his name's Jeffrey Jones. He's a great actor. Like I've seen him in other roles, and he's done a great job,
Mm-hmm.
especially as like an antagonist. And I'd say he did, like, for what he was given, what he was told to do. I think he did a good job, um,
Yeah.
for the most
Yeah.
part. But
Yeah, I think
yeah,
most of the actors did like the best they could with what they
right.
had. It's so hard to judge like acting
hmm
when you give them such
Well, it's
terrible roles.
yeah, terrible roles, and then the dialogue was just so
Yeah.
cringy. I feel like
Yeah.
every time Howard opened his mouth, I was just like, I can't do this. Apparently there was like four or five different people that were involved with the Howard the Duck like costume. Like you had someone in the suit, you had someone doing other things outside the suit, and then you had the voice, which was different from the person who was in the suit, and there's a couple other things that they were doing, but
Yeah.
it was just it was rough.
Yeah. So you get the villain introduced. So the actual
hmm
character was introduced actually probably halfway and maybe a little. I mean, it's right
hmm
after that weird love scene. And I don't remember, but the actual villain like becomes a villain an hour into the movie.
Right.
And so kind of at that point you see a pretty big shift in like the direction of the film. You actually
hmm
have like some purpose. You have a villain that's, that's you have your antagonist that's pushing against the hero and his goals of uh fitting in and
Yeah.
trying to get off the
Trying
planet.
to get home. Yeah. Which like, and so think about like character development. Like he was just not, Howard the Duck wasn't very likable even from the beginning. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing that, I mean, I guess he chose to save Leah Thompson when she was getting mugged at the beginning when they first met. Like, okay, he was willing to step in and says, "I know quack foo," and then fought those gang members.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
that is the actual comic book Howard the Duck. That is his only superpower is he knows quack fu.
is it really?
Yeah, he doesn't
Oh,
have any
I didn't
superpowers.
know
That's
that.
all
That's
that's
funny.
all he knows how to do is quack
It's
fu.
quack foo. That's the thing is like he's not really, at least in this they don't establish him as like a superhero. He doesn't have superpowers. He's
Right.
not. He's a duck from another world that is just like ours. It's just, and according to them, humans evolved to
Yeah.
become ducks instead
It's a
of humans.
multiverse. It's a
It is a
multiverse. It's the
multiverse. Yeah,
first
it's another word.
multiverse movie.
It's true. It is. Yes, and Marvel still can't figure out how to do a multiverse movie. So he comes from another world. So like he's basically a human, but he's a duck. But he doesn't have any like special abilities or powers. But like he becomes a hero in the end. He saves the world. He saves
Hmm.
our world. Um, so he's a hero, and he's not like a traditional superhero, I would say.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it's not even really. Yeah, it's hard to call it a superhero movie, but it is
Uh
like
huh.
it's just a comic book movie, really.
Yeah, that's true. It is,
But yeah,
which is fine.
yeah,
Yeah. How about those duck puns? Have I mentioned them yet?
yeah, yeah,
I couldn't
yeah.
stand them.
Um, yeah. So, were there things about that last 50 minutes that you thought went well? What'd you
The
think of that
last
last
50
fifty
minutes.
minutes?
Well, like you said, once we actually got a story, there was some improvement in the movie. But even the third act, I felt like was like all over the place. It just dragged on, and he like, you know, dies twice. Like he, I can't remember what the first one was. Do you remember what it was? When
Um,
they're fighting the villain,
yeah,
like
it was.
didn't he sacrifice himself kind of, and
Yeah, it was like an
dies.
electric
Well,
surge or something.
supposedly, like you think he's dead, he's not.
Yeah,
Comes
yeah,
back, and then he dies again at the end after he sacrifices himself to stop the monsters, the overlords from coming to Earth.
yeah.
Um, I don't know. I mean, so it was like, okay, it was like It's like, is that two Dark Knights of the Souls? Like, I don't know. Like, it was just,
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah,
but
just
like, but
that
even up
whole
to, yeah, go ahead.
that whole 50 minutes was, it was like all over the place still.
Even
That
the
you get
airplane
this.
scene, like, how long were they flying on that airplane? Like, it was like 20
Oh my
minutes
gosh,
or
I forgot
something.
about that.
It
Yeah,
was so bad. And like, it was mostly
I was
like,
thinking of the diner scene that went on and on
oh
and
my
on, that
goodness,
fight
the diner
thing.
scene. Here's a pie. Oh no, ran into it. They just like literally, so like I was watching some behind the scenes stuff about the movie, and apparently they couldn't figure out how to throw the pie or like to move it towards their face, so they literally had to have the guys that were fighting them
Yeah.
actually run head first into the pie in order to be pied. And there was another scene, the cop, when he throws a cigarette into the garbage can, and the cop goes to grab the cigarette, but he tucks his entire body into
Oh
the
yeah.
garbage can, and then so they're able to escape. Is like it's so dumb. It's just little things like that just stand out. It's like, why?
Yeah.
But then the airplane scene, that was way too long. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of it
They
was
were
green. It
flying
was all like green
forever.
screen when like you're like looking up when you're actually like watching Howard up close. Like,
Yeah.
and it kind of stands out a little bit, which is fine. Like I said, it's made in the '80s. And then I'm trying to think what else happens in that. Like the Dark Overlord steals Leah Thompson literally for no reason at all, or kidnaps her, and then takes her to the place. And I mean, literally the only reason is to continue the plot so that Howard will go after them and try
Yeah.
to save her.
Well, they
Um,
said that it was because they needed another body to for another one of his people to
oh,
latch
you're right. You're
into.
right. All right, I stand
Um,
corrected.
but there was, I mean, they're going to a giant lab with a bunch of people there, so.
True. Yeah. Exactly. I don't know. Like why her? I don't know. Yeah. And then they get to the lab, and then that whole fight was just.
Yeah.
It was rough. It was boring. And then
Yeah,
they happen to have a weapon that is able to stop the
yeah.
machine or kill the villain, which is fine.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's clearly a lot of issues there too.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that was good about the movie was that, yeah, in the end, so even though he was like uh disregarded and treated horribly by all the
Right.
people, in the end he sacrifices himself
Right,
to save the
for a world
world.
that has been up against him, that has
Yeah.
not cared for him,
And
that's
his
hated him.
sacrifice was, well, one, he when he drove the little cart thing into the monster, he was sacrificing himself in a way that, because the monster died twice. So the first time was that he drove into
Right.
him,
Yeah.
and he was thinking he was going to die, but then he didn't die. So I mean, that was a sacrifice.
Yeah.
uh and then the second sacrifice that he did was that he had to kill, yeah, he had to kill the monster or something,
Uh huh.
and just make sure that he had to he had to destroy the machine
Yes.
so that the other monsters couldn't come.
Good.
And by doing that, he couldn't get back to his own world, and so he had to save the world. To save the world, he had to sacrifice him ever getting back to his home world.
Right. When he could have, I'm supposing, is that a word? I don't know. I suppose that he could have used the machine while like that was all going on to just, kick a ride back to his planet and just leave that world to die. I'm assuming that could happen.
Yeah,
So
I guess that's what they were implying.
I think that's what they're implying. And so he chose instead to sacrifice his only opportunity of going home, to then sacrifice and destroy the machine that would have taken him home. And now he's just stuck on Earth and has to live his life on Earth.
Yeah. So like the good that we saw was that there was good character development, and then there was a good sacrifice, and that was about the only thing good that was written in this movie. Otherwise, it was
Pretty
all
much.
over the place. Like we said, you didn't see the villain till an hour into the movie, and before that, it was just weird things happening that you don't want to see. And
Yep.
then you get to the 50-minute mark where you just have these long fights and long scenes that just were unnecessary with the villain, and
Yep.
weird motives, weird choices by everybody. And then you get to the point where he's like,
Yeah, it's
"Oh,
a,
this world treated me
yeah,
so horribly. I'm gonna sacrifice myself."
right. That's the thing, is that the character motivations were just so all over the place and didn't make any sense. Um, even Leah Thompson's character, I just felt like she was kind of all over the place. And then obviously falling in love with the duck is just weird, which I understand in the comics she did that, but it's okay. Comics can be bad too. And I've not read much of Howard Duck in the comics. I don't think I ever will, because I know it's just as cringy as the movie. No, probably not as bad, but anyways,
Yeah,
it's just got a lot of problems. And
yeah. There was
if
no
I never
clear
watch this movie again, I
motives.
will be better for it.
Yeah, yeah. There's no clear motives for the hero. There was no clear
Right.
goals. The antagonist was not present for most of the movie, and then a lot of scenes just dragged on and on. A lot of sexualization of women,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah,
Right. Just we look at the
yeah,
good, bad, and ugly. Like there's, like I said, we have the good and the heroism. We have the bad and just terrible storytelling and writing, and we have ugly and just, yeah. I mean, treating women horribly and sexualizing them in a way that's
yeah,
not beautiful, not glorious. Which is
yeah.
something that
It's a
we talk about
theme,
a lot
a
in these
theme we've been
movies.
seeing in every single movie we've
Right.
reviewed.
Exactly. Which is one reason why we're doing this. Like we want to expose that and point that out and just be like, yeah, this is
Yeah, for sure.
not beautiful. This is not good. The world says it's beautiful. The world says it's good, but it's not. And we want, so we want to show and tell what is true and what is beautiful, and the way that movies and Hollywood, especially Hollywood, treats women is just not beautiful, not good.
hmm So, I want to talk about the visuals. I think we can get into that quite a bit.
Sure, yeah.
Um, so a lot of the CGI stuff, especially towards the end,
Which most
with
of
the
it was
villain,
towards the end, I would
yeah,
say. Yeah. There's
a
some green
lot of
screen
that,
stuff, but yeah.
it absolutely reminded me of Ewok Adventures.
Yes. I'd much
Exact
rather
same
watch Ewok
level.
Adventures than this movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. Ewok Adventures is a great movie,
Yep.
but the
Which George
visuals,
Lucas was
yeah,
produced
the
produced as
visuals
well.
were like exactly the same, like of quality. But
It
this was
was.
like a $35 million movie,
Right.
and
Yeah.
they made
Yeah. Like, and like I don't know like if we can what movies we can compare it to during this time. I mean, the first three Star Wars movies came up for this, and there's
yeah,
no CGI that's that awful that stands
yeah.
out
Well,
like that.
yeah. Well, their biggest problem was that they didn't do practical effects with a lot of that stuff, which they should have done,
Mhm.
which is what they did with Star Wars. If you think of the
Yeah.
Rancor in Revenge of the Sith,
Hmm.
or sorry, Return of the Jedi, uh,
Hmm.
you see like they used a practical monster like as a
True.
puppet or whatever, and like with the monster they
Which looks
had in
way better.
this, they definitely could have done something like that.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I mean, obviously it's way more expensive, but
Yeah, but
this is
it
what
just looks
they
way better,
went with.
and
Yeah,
yeah,
and
it
you can see, yeah,
ages
and then
better
if you
too.
look at like, yeah, if you look at Ewok Adventures, they did the CGI route for a lot of their
Hmm.
monsters, and they look exactly the same like this,
Yeah,
and like the
I feel like this
lightning.
was worse.
Yeah,
I mean,
it might
I
have
don't know. It's been
been.
a while since I've seen the Ewok Adventures, but
Yeah,
I don't know. It was just
but you see
bad.
the lightning and all that just looked so bad,
Oh, yep.
and the
Explosions and lightning.
glowing and all that. Yeah, it
Good
just
point.
that all looked horrible. And then the music score,
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
this time it was quite noticeable for me. What I
Yeah.
noticed was, okay, so this is how I imagine it went down. The guy that does the music score gets handed this movie, and they're like, okay, so there's some scenes in here that aren't very interesting. Can you try to make them more interesting?
Yeah.
And there's some awkward times. Just put some music in there to go with the feel of the scene. And the guy's just like watching this thing, and he's like, I don't know what to
Whatever.
do with this. Like, I'll see what I can do, but I don't think I'm gonna
Yeah.
be able to save your guys' movie.
Right.
This is bad.
I mean, it had kind of an '80s vibe to it, and I mean, because it was in the '80s. But yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Like he did the best that he could, and it still just
Yeah.
didn't help or work.
Yeah. Oh, here, Beverly was the girl's name.
Beverly,
Yeah.
Vanessa. I don't even know where I got that. I was say yeah, CGI like the monsters base thing stood out. They obviously didn't use CGI for Howard the Duck, but like the costume, it's just eerie. Like the eyes, just it was just kind of like almost uncanny valley. It was just this looked pretty bad. Yeah, of course, like I said, probably the best they could have done. I don't know what other route they could have taken. I think
So, yeah.
go ahead.
No, I'll save that. I'll save that for the after hours. Never mind.
Okay. Howard the Duck in the comics, he's a little skinnier, so you have that. Where it's like this one's a little bigger. But he just looks odd. It just
Yeah.
doesn't fit. It's really kind of awkward and cringy.
And big old eyes that
The eyes are just
stare into your soul.
Yep.
But I have written down because I was doing some research in the comics, and Beverly is actually pretty accurate in this movie.
Really?
As far as the way they portrayed her and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I think I knew that. Yeah. Well, like
I think
she
she's
obviously
the only
falls
other-
in love with Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
so weird. Speciality. Don't do that, kids.
Weird stuff.
Don't associate with wickedness in that way.
I don't know. I don't know if there's much else that I have to say, honestly.
I have a whole list of other things that I didn't like about it, but I think we probably call it quits.
Yeah, this was
shorter
shorter episode for you guys.
Did I mention there were a lot of duck puns?
There's a lot of duck puns. Yeah. So, what do you rate this movie?
Oh boy. So I didn't even know where to put this.
It's 1 to 10.
How do you rate this movie? I mean, this one came out and this is the earliest movie we've done, like as far as
yeah,
in
release.
Yeah,
so all the other movies that we did were actually pretty 2010s to later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
this is the first movie that was actually an
provides
older
a little
movie.
bit of challenge. This is like 30 years before the other movies that we've watched.
Yeah, this is the first superhero movie ever released in theaters.
Like even DC.
Right? Oh,
it's the first
DC.
Marvel. Like I'm sure Superman, like the Superman movies came out before.
Yeah,
well, maybe. When did because Batman 89?
This is 80.
Well, like Michael Keaton's Batman came out in 89.
Yeah, that was the first Batman.
But there was Superman movies before that. So I don't think it was the first superhero. It could. I mean, it could have been. It's around that time.
Yeah,
it's the first Marvel superhero.
Yeah.
Released in theaters.
And it's got a very interesting story for how it just came to be, and we'll
it does. Yeah.
But yeah, so
rating I don't want to be generous with this movie. I don't need to be generous. So I'm giving it a 1.5.
Okay, I gave it a 2.
And that's probably pretty low. You gave it a 2?
I gave it a 2 with a lot of generosity. A lot. The only reason is because there's a good sacrifice and there's good character development. That was the only reason.
That's it.
Because I thought, okay, if there was ever a movie that came out that had nudity and gay people in it and no character development, I was like, okay, that could be a 1. So I'm like, there's room for a 1. There's room for a movie to get lower than this.
That's a good question.
That was my thoughts.
I don't even know. I mean, I guess I agree with that. Is there a movie that could be worse than this? Yeah, of course there can. But this is pretty low. This is down there. So
yeah.
And thinking about the other movies we've seen, it's like this is way worse in so many ways.
Calling it right between our two, 1.7 is a fair
At 1.7, I like that.
1.7. That's a fair rating for this.
What movies are we that are gonna come close to that? I'm really curious about the Punisher movie we're gonna watch, because that, like, was it never released in theaters?
I don't know.
I don't think
really
it
done
was.
any
Like, you can't
research on
find
yet.
it anywhere. You can find it on YouTube, and that's it. But like,
Yeah.
so I wonder if it's just awful. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, there's a weird. I mean, you can buy DVDs. You can buy. There's even some Blu-ray releases only in Australia. Blu-ray releases, which is weird.
Okay.
But there you can buy DVDs for it. So it's released on DVD. I don't know if it went straight to DVD or what, but I mean, yeah, like I said, I haven't done any research on it yet. But
Yeah, I wonder. Like, I don't think there's gonna be any movies that we watch that are gonna come this close. I mean, I don't. Man Thing. Have you seen Man Thing? Okay, so
not yet.
I don't know how I don't know what that one's
That
gonna be.
might be pretty bad.
Yeah. I looked at the Rotten Tomatoes score for this movie, and I think it was like a 13 or something. So, not that Rotten Tomatoes is like a hit or miss. Like,
Back then,
sometimes
like,
reliable.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's reliable. I say a lot of the times it is,
stuff.
but there's also a lot of times where it's not reliable. Especially, I think the critic score was 13 and the audience score was like 30 something. It's a little higher, but anyways.
Oh, you know,
we're giving it 1.7.
Worse.
What?
Elektra.
Oh no. Yeah, probably. It might be.
It might be. We'll see. I've never seen
that
it.
movie. I don't think I've seen it. Because it's the same Elektra from Daredevil, right?
Yeah, it's the sequel to Daredevil, or a spin-off of Daredevil.
Yeah. That might be worse. I don't know. I don't know. Probably not. Maybe. It's going to be close.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? I don't know.
All right.
So I think one good way to conclude this is just say, you don't need to watch this movie. There's no reason to watch this movie. Don't watch this movie. I mean, if you want to, fine. But I think that there's just a lot of things that are just really wrong with it, and that it's just don't do yourself a favor. Don't. You might have different advice, but that's my advice.
I don't even see any. I mean, unless there's just some weird.
Right? Is there something redeemable about
that
this movie?
I'll see this again, but I don't think so.
It just left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for listening.
So we watch things so that you don't have to.
Yeah. Thank you for listening.
But we have to do it, sadly. But anyways.
This was our
Sorry, I keep interrupting.
No, you're good. This was our review of Howard the Duck. Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to our Patreon and listen to us some more. For us? And
close us out.
Have a quacktastic day.
All right, I'm done. That's it. I'm done. Just kind of set you up. Okay.
Thank you, guys. All right.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.